Hey guys, Richard here with Downgrid Survival. Today we're going to talk about death after SHTF. It's a video I've been promising for a little while. It's been something that's been on my mind, and I really want to share some thoughts with you. Death is something that we're all going to face. We were born into this world, and we're going to die leaving this world. And it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about this and even think about it. So stick with me, please, through the end of this video and just power through it and hear what I have to say. There's been a lot of discussion in the prepping community as to how things unfold and what's going to happen and really just how many people are going to die. And so what I'm about to share with you might sound a bit shocking. Also understand that there's not a lot of scientific data behind it, and it's largely just some forward thinking and considering the situation, playing it out in our minds, and coming up to a realistic number that's the best that we can come up with. So after a significant SHTF event, and I'm talking within 1 year of just total collapse, 60 to 90% of the people on the earth are going to die. Now that's a huge number, and a lot of you are probably saying, oh no, there's no way. Well, stick with me and let's play this out in our minds and let's talk about it. And I do have some notes here I'm going to refer to because I want to get some of this right. So when you think about a significant event, most people, they think about nuclear war. If nuclear war broke out, certainly missiles will be flying back and forth, and millions and millions and millions of people are going to die instantly. And then thereafter, through radiation and starvation and the things that follow, a large part of the population is going to die. Okay, so we get that. That's something that's always been there. It's something that people don't think about too much because it seemed pretty unrealistic, even though many countries around the world now have nuclear weapons. However, in our recent past, we've seen just how dangerous it can be. And there is the threat of nuclear war. And there's been a lot of threats of nuclear war. And so that's something we don't want to dismiss. Okay, so that's one. And these aren't the ones I'm going to be talking about largely, but these are just the most common. Another very common one would be an asteroid strike. Okay, something we've always heard that there's millions of rocks flying around out in space, and at any point in time, one could strike the Earth again that wipes out the population. Okay, unlikely? No, I'd say it's likely. It's something that has happened in the past, and so it can certainly happen again. So let's keep that on the list. That's something that we should kind of be concerned with a little bit. Another one is an illness, okay? And I got to be careful with the words I use here, so I'll just call it an illness that sweeps the earth. Now that has happened numerous times in the last several hundred years, where millions and millions of people have died because of an illness. And of course, we just recently experienced that ourselves. And thankfully, even though it was very tragic, it wasn't as deadly as a lot of people initially thought. So we got lucky with that one, right? And now a lot of people won't say it's lucky because almost everyone knows someone who had it. And certainly many of you know someone who have passed away, and that's unfortunate. But we're not talking about wiping out, 25, 50, 75% of the population. So those are all things that are typical that most people think about. Now, let's also think about some other scenarios here that could lead to a total collapse, okay? Total grid down. And, that's where I'm leading towards, total grid down, because that's where things really get bad. So what could cause that? Well, a conventional war where the use of an EMP is used. Now, one very well-placed EMP above the United States centrally could take out the power grid and fry all electronics in the United States. And that's just with one missile. And these missiles do exist. So an adversary who decides that, okay, enough is enough and we're going to, change things up, could push a button, launch one missile, and potentially change the world. So that's one. Another one that we've already experienced a little bit of is the supply chain. We all know and understand how fragile it is, and there's been talks of massive shortages, and a lot of people have seen that already, but there's a lot more on the horizon. So that could lead to significant disruption in our society, and to include a grid down situation. Another one is government collapse. Now, another one that people here in the United States are a little naive about is that, no, that can't happen here. Yeah, there's corruption and in our government, but something like that could never happen here. But if you look at history, there's been a lot of nations that have risen and a lot of nations that have fallen. And so, no, it is very likely, especially with the level of corruption that we see in our government today. So that could lead to a downgrade scenario. Another one is, a global food crisis, which we're on the heels of right now. Of course, you're learning more and more about this probably all the time, is just how fragile our food supply is. Very few people grow their own food these days. Everyone relies on someone else to grow the food for us. And those farms and those ranchers are drying up. And crops aren't being planted this year, and crops are not producing this year. And, because of supply chain issues, a lot of crops and foods are not getting moved around like they need to be. And so we're starting to see disruptions, and those disruptions are going to continue. And that could lead to a total collapse downgrade scenario. So with all of that in mind, and in all these scenarios, and there are many, many other scenarios that could lead to a downgrid, let's dive deeper now into what that actually means for us. So total grid failure means, first and foremost, no water. Okay, so water is your number one prep, because you can't live more than 3 days without water. And without electricity, pumping stations stop, which means water stops flowing. It no longer comes out of the tap. And at that point in time, things are going to get real ugly real fast. We'll talk deeper about that in just a moment. So the next one would be food. Okay, so food production is going to come to a halt, because everything revolving around our food production revolves around some form of energy. And when the energy goes away, foods just aren't going to magically show up on your table. And very, very, very few people are planting gardens and even know how to plant a garden. And even if you know how to plant a garden, if the grid goes down today, it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you a season probably to get a garden in and to get food back on your table. So what do you do until then? And the next one I really want to touch on is medical. Okay, so when the grid goes down, all medical comes to a halt. Drug manufacturing comes to a halt. Medical procedures come to a halt. Doctors and nurses, they kind of melt away and just go back and take care of their own families, because hospitals and doctors' offices can't function. If there's no supplies rolling in and there's no electricity, there's not much they can do. And so all that kind of goes away. So each one of these, coincidentally, are the top 3 pillars of prepping. Okay, so you got your food, you got your water, and you got your medical. And any one of these, you take any one of these away, and it's going to result in death by the millions. But let's break this down even further now and talk about how we actually get there. So let's go back to water again. So without clean drinking water, most people have, in the prepping community, we talk about having water stored, and we talk about having a means to filter and clean water, and that's great. But there's very few preppers out there. So the general populace, when the grid goes down, they're going to be drinking water from their toilets when they get creative, and draining their hot water heaters and drinking the water from there. And when that's gone, they've got about 3 days to live at that point. So they're going to be out in the streets. They're going to be out looking for water. A lot of those are going to end up at streams and ponds and rivers and various places where they can find water, and they'll be drinking water that is unfiltered. And at that point, many, many, many will get sick, which will eventually result in death. For those people who are living in the urban areas, where you're living in an apartment building in downtown Manhattan or Chicago or Los Angeles or Seattle and many of these other places, there aren't a lot of creeks and rivers and streams and ponds and things that you can go and find in order to try to get drinking water. And so a lot of these people, they have 3 days to get out of the city, and then they're going to die. So next we'll talk about starvation. Now, we all know most people have, a week's worth of food, a few days worth of food to a week's worth of food, maybe a couple of weeks if they stretch it. And that's the average American. That's about all the food they have in their pantry. As preppers, we teach that you should have, 3 months, 6 months, a year or more worth of food. And, that's great. But for all those friends, neighbors, and families that are not preppers, they're going to be relying upon what's in their pantry. And when the food runs out, they're going to be hitting the streets looking for whatever they can find. A lot of those people are going to be trying to live off the land, eating vegetables, eating garbage and grasses and trees and shrubs and berries and whatever they can find out in the land. And a lot of those people are going to get sick from what they consume, and they're going to die. And the rest are going to eventually die of starvation because they're just not going to have the nutrition that their bodies need. And with that, a lot of people are going to turn to fishing and hunting. And even a lot of you are probably going to say, well, I'll just go out and start fishing and hunting. And that's all great. But when you think about everybody in your city or your town is starting to rely on the local hunting and fishing, well, number one, most people don't know how to do it, and they're still going to starve and die. But for those that do, you're all going to be competing for the fish and for the rabbit or the deer that's in your area. Think about the people who live in New York City all going down to Central Park with their bows and arrows, their rocks, their sticks, or whatever they can find, and they're all chasing after the squirrels in Central Park. What a sight that would be, right? It's horrific. Which leads us to medical. So let's talk about medical for a second. So without proper hydration, food, living in a down-grid scenario, it's easy for people to get hurt. People are going to get hurt, and they're going to need medical attention. Consider all the people who rely upon prescription drugs to just get through from one day to the next. All this is going to go away. Hospitals won't be functioning, and people will be left to their own device to try to survive and take care of themselves. Now, when you're living in a scenario like that, where you're trying to hunt or fish for food and scavenge for whatever you can find, you're going to, eat something or drink something that makes you sick, no medical help, and most people don't have the proper medications to treat such things. You're going to be out and about, and you're going to get insect bites that'll get infected. You'll scrape a finger, a knee, or get a cut, and which seems very simple and can be easily treated with the proper medications. But if it's not available, a lot of people will die from these sorts of things. And then we have to consider the fact that in a downgrid situation like that crime is going to just be rampant. We see on the news today, when it's reported, just horrific crimes being committed all across this nation already, and people are getting away with things. And you think that's bad. People are scared now in New York City just to go out at night because crime has gotten so bad. But if you can imagine, you're out trying to find a rabbit or a squirrel or some nuts off a tree or something to provide for your family. And, it's going to be fighting for survival just to leave your home or wherever it is that you're at. So crime is going to cause a lot of death. Now, with all this death that is going to be taking place all around us, increases the likelihood of, I'll use the word illnesses here, airborne illnesses, pollutants that gets into the groundwater. The smell is going to be horrific because people are going to be piling up because there's not going to be an emergency services to come and take care of them. That in itself is going to lead to a lot of problems. It's going to lead to a lot of contamination of whatever possible water is available or any food that might be available on the land. It's going to become contaminated, which is again going to lead to a lot of death. So as you think of it this way and just kind of move through the steps of how things can unfold, you'll quickly realize just how bad things can get and how quickly it can happen. So when you're thinking of a timeline, you know, people can live no more than 3 days without water. So within 3 days, things start to get really, really bad and start to compound significantly because people start dying and those bodies are going to start rotting, and it's going to add to the problems. And then, of course, in the coming weeks, you know, the population is just going to be completely decimated. And yeah, and then from there on out, it's just going to be, you know, sicknesses, health, and, you know, crime that's going to take people. So you can see over the course of a year how things can transpire and how it's going to affect everyone everywhere. So let's talk about the prepared for a moment. So you're stockpiling, I'm stockpiling, we've got supplies. And so you would think that, oh, okay, well, we're going to be fine because I know how to hunt, I know how to fish, I know how to grow a garden, and we've got stockpiles, so we're going to be okay. Well, possibly, but possibly not, because it's very possible you will die at the hands of others. And you might say, oh no, I'm stockpiled with, you know, defense tools, and I've got everything I need to defend myself and my family. And okay, that's fine, but just remember, you know, you and your family might be fighting, a group of 50 or 100 who are starving and are determined to come and take whatever it is that you have. So even the well-prepared are going to be vulnerable. And so don't dismiss the fact that just because you're prepared, you're going to be perfectly fine. Eventually, you're going to run out of supplies. You might have supplies for 6 months. Great. You might have supplies for a year. Even better. But eventually, those supplies are going to dwindle. So what are you going to do for the second year, the third year, the fourth year, when, you know, you're trying to live off the land? What do you do at that point? You know, at that point, that's where you have to learn how to make your own tools. You have to learn how to harvest your own seeds and keep your garden going year after year after year. You have to learn how to trap and hunt and fish, and you know, on top of that, you're constantly fighting illnesses and injuries, and defending your property and your family from thugs that, you know, are surviving from marauders that are just going from one place to another, just taking what they want. It's going to be an ongoing thing moving forward, and it could be just, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. So with all this predicted death, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, why do I even bother to prep? Well, a lot could easily just say, you know, I'm just going to give in, and because what's going to happen is going to happen. And, you know, that's one way to look at it, I suppose. But another one is to, I think we're put on this planet for a reason. And for your sake, for the sake of your family, and for the sake of humanity, I think we all owe it to ourselves to fight and to keep pressing forward and to do everything we can to survive as long as we can, right? That's all you can do. All you can do is the best you can do. Whatever, you know, financial means you have, whatever physical health you have, all you can do is the best you can do. And then at that point, you just got to leave the rest up to God, right? And if you have a belief system, then rely on that belief system and know that there's something more than just what you're experiencing here in this life. And that knowledge right there alone brings great comfort to me and my family. And so therefore we're not scared. You know, whatever happens is going to happen, but we know there's something much bigger beyond our time here upon this earth. And for those of you still thinking like, well, these are unrealistic numbers, and well, and that's fine, you know. I tend to try to rely upon guidance from my belief system, and my belief system is in the Bible. And the Bible tells us that as many as 2/3 of the people are going to die during the tribulation, right? So are we there yet? No, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're very close. I think we're very close to the end of times. But if you think that 2/3 of the people are going to die, you know, when the end of days are upon us, how many people are going to die leading up to that? And with the scenarios that I just outlined, I think they're very realistic. I think it's I think we are living on a razor's edge that most people don't realize we're living on. And any moment in time, things can just really start falling apart around us. So I urge you to, keep prepping, keep doing what you can, do what you can for those whom you love and care about around you. But at the end of the day, we all have free agency. We're all going to be making our own choices, and you have the choice to prepare or to not prepare. Either way, I hope this video has been helpful to you, and I hope that you smash that like button and support this channel a little bit, and comment and subscribe down below as well. And because I've got more videos coming out. I've got a lot of good videos on this channel, and I've got more content I'll be bringing to you that is thought-provoking and helpful as you continue your preparedness journey. So that's all I've got for this video. If you have any comments, drop them below. If you have any questions, drop them below and let me know what you think, and I'll try to get back to you. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.